We've all had different kinds of leaders, right? Maybe you had a boss who could get a team fired up about some huge, inspiring idea. Or maybe you had one who was just a genius at making sure every single task was done perfectly and on time. We've all seen them, and let's be honest, they can totally make or break your job. So, what really separates a good leader from a truly great one? That is the big question we are digging into today. Are the best leaders master organizers? The managers who just keep the train running smoothly on the tracks? Or are they the motivators, the visionaries, who inspire all of us to build a completely new, better train? Well, as you're about to see, it's a little more complicated than just picking one or the other. So to get us started, let's just look at two classic types of leaders. On one side, you've got the leader who's all about the tasks, the deadlines, the results. It's a very clear, if you do this, you get that kind of approach. Then, on the other side, you've got the leader who's focused on the bigger picture, on inspiring a vision and really developing their people. Two very, very different styles, but I bet you've seen both of them out in the wild. Okay, let's start with that first archetype. This is the leader who basically treats leadership like a straightforward deal. The whole style is built on this transactional exchange. If you do this for me, I'll do that for you. It's structured, it's predictable, and for a lot of people, it's kind of the default image of what a boss is supposed to do. And there's a name for this, of course. Theorists like James McGregor Burns and Bernard Bass called it transactional leadership. It's pretty much the foundation for most of our traditional ideas about leadership. The focus is purely on that exchange, that transaction, between the leader and the follower. You do your job well, you get rewarded. You mess up, well, there are consequences. It's a system built on a clear tit-for-tat. And this cycle here shows you exactly how it works. It's a very clear process. The leader assigns a task, they monitor how you're doing, and then they give you a reward, or a penalty, based on how it all turned out. The cycle gets a result, and then, boom, it starts all over again. It's all about structure and efficiency. So when you break it down, this style is really built on a few core ideas. It needs clear structures and expectations, right? Everyone knows their role and the short-term goals they're supposed to be hitting. And the engine that drives it all is this idea of contingent reward. It's just a fancy way of saying it's a performance-based system. Your reward is entirely contingent on getting the job done right. Simple as that. All right, now let's completely switch gears and look at the other side of the leadership coin. If transactional leadership is all about managing a deal, then transformational leadership is about sparking inspiration. This is a totally different way of thinking, focused on actually changing and elevating the people who are involved. I mean, the definition here really says it all. It's a process that creates a real connection. The goal isn't just to check a box or finish a task, it's to actually raise the level of motivation and even the morality of everybody on the team. This kind of leader pays close attention to what their followers need, and they're always trying to help them reach their absolute fullest potential. Okay, so how do they actually do that? Well, this gives us the blueprint. The researcher Bernard Bass figured out that there are 4 key components that make up transformational leadership. They're known as the 4 I's. So let's take a look at how these leaders really motivate people. What they do is they fundamentally shift your perspective. They make everyone more aware of why the team's goals are so important. They encourage you to look beyond just your own self-interest and think about what's good for the whole group. And they help you tap into those higher-level needs, things like personal growth and a sense of accomplishment. This is what sets the stage for the 4 key behaviors that make it all happen. And it all starts with the leader themselves. The first 2 I's are all about how the leader creates and communicates a vision. First up is idealized influence. This is about being the kind of role model that people genuinely want to follow. They don't just talk the talk, they walk the walk, with super high ethical standards that build this deep sense of trust and respect. Then, they use that trust for what's called inspirational motivation. These leaders are master communicators. They can paint this incredibly compelling, optimistic picture of the future. And yeah, they set high expectations for sure. But they also use symbols and emotional appeals to get everyone on board and truly committed to that shared vision. It's about making the work actually feel like it means something. The next 2 I's are all about developing the team. With intellectual stimulation, the leader is constantly challenging the status quo. They don't just bark orders. They encourage creativity. They want to hear new ideas, and they empower their team to question old ways of doing things, even the leader's own ideas. It's about building a team of thinkers, not just a team of doers. And finally, we have individualized consideration. This is where the leader really becomes a coach or a mentor. They create this supportive climate by listening, and I mean really listening to what each person needs and what their ambitions are. They use things like delegation not just to get work done, but as a tool to help their people grow by taking on new challenges. It's about seeing the potential in every single person and then helping them unlock it. So, okay, we've got the taskmaster on one side and the visionary on the other. But is that really the whole story? Not even close. Now we're going to see how these two big ideas actually come together to form a much more complete and, frankly, a much more useful picture of what leadership is all about. You know, it's so easy to look at these two styles and think you have to pick a side. Are you transactional? Are you transformational? A manager or a motivator? But what if that's the completely wrong way to think about it? Well, here's the twist. It turns out it's not a choice, it's a spectrum. This is the full-range leadership model, and it was developed by Bass and another researcher named Avolio. And what they did was they put all these styles on a single continuum. It starts with this really passive, hands-off style called laissez-faire, which literally means let them do. Then it moves up through the transactional styles we talked about, and it goes all the way up to the most active and effective transformational styles. And this visual makes the whole idea crystal clear. You can actually map leadership behaviors from being super ineffective and passive on one end, all the way to being highly effective and active on the other. But the key insight here is that the very best leaders don't just live at the top end of his chart. They know how to operate all across the spectrum, depending on what the situation calls for. And this wasn't some idea that just appeared overnight. It actually evolved over decades. It started back in '78, when Burns first separated out the two types. Then, in '85, Bass was the one who said, hey, maybe these are on a continuum. And finally, in 1991, Bass and Avolio gave us this comprehensive, full-range model that's still so widely used today. But, of course, no theory is perfect. So, to really get the full picture, we have to talk about how this model holds up in the real world. And that means looking at some of the critiques. Okay, so one of the main tools used to figure out where a leader lands on this spectrum is something called the Multi-Factor Leadership Questionnaire, or MLQ. And critics point out that relying so heavily on just one survey can lead to some biases. They also argue the model can sometimes oversimplify really complex human behaviors. It might not take different situations into account enough, and it was mostly developed in Western cultures, so there's still a debate about how well it applies everywhere else in the world. So when you pull it all together, what's the big takeaway? I think it's this. The most effective leaders don't just have one style. They have a full leadership toolkit. They know how to be transactional when a project needs clear structure and everyone needs to be held accountable. And they know how to be transformational when the team needs a new vision and a serious shot of inspiration. They know exactly which tool to pull out for the job at hand. And that really brings us to the final and maybe the most important question, the one for you to think about. It doesn't matter if you're leading a huge company or just a small project team. Which of these styles is your natural go-to, your default setting? And maybe more importantly, which part of this whole spectrum do you need to work on and develop to become a more complete and a more effective leader?